My name is Virginia Trimble. I'm Professor of Physics and Astronomy at the University of California, Irvine, and a staff member of the Queen Jadwiga Observatory in Japan, Poland. I was inducted as an ordinary Phi Beta Kappa member in 1964 at UCLA. That's Eta of California. No, I'm lying to you, Epsilon of California. In the past, I've represented our chapter at the National Triennial Meeting, and I've been a Phi Beta Kappa visiting scholar for some long period of time, which I now have forgotten, but like a decade or something. Being the national lecturer affected my career a good deal because I traveled a lot and got paid for it, as it turns out, and I used the money to buy musical instruments and things like that. Our own chapter, the founding was organized by people over in the humanities and social sciences, and they must have canvassed the whole faculty to find out who were members. I think one of the surprises was that there were actually quite a few Phi Beta Kappa members in the physics department. Professor Benford and Professor Schultz are still alive but retired, and a fair number of people who are no longer with us who are Phi Beta Kappa members, because it has always focused on the liberal arts, and they used to take much more seriously a broader background than we now impose, or we would have no new members at all. I know that when I was elected, there were only like a dozen that year at UCLA, and I was the only one from the sciences. And my qualifications for being elected included having done a year of ancient Egyptian art and architecture, a year of hieroglyphs, a year of linguistics, many things besides astronomy and physics. When we came here, they were still somewhat more rigid about new members, and I think the first few years the chapter existed, we elected rather few members because we took seriously the requirements of foreign language and other things on beyond just the basics for graduating. That's no longer true. We feel that if a student has enough breadth to graduate in a major that counts as a liberal art, or in some other major but with lots of other breadth classes behind him or her, that is reasonable for membership. We've in some sense become less strict, less demanding, less I don't know what. The chapter has grown enormously because the campus has grown enormously. When we first had both a fairly new chapter, Mu of California for Phi Beta Kappa, the number of initiates was comparable for the two organizations, like 15 maybe a year. And so we shared the initiation. We used space over in what used to be called the faculty club and had one initiation, then a reception, then the other initiation. And a few students were initiated into both, and some faculty members belonged to both. But the whole shooting match with everybody's friends and relations all fitted in the faculty club. That isn't true anymore. The number of members that we initiate each year has gone up into the hundreds. You know, it's 5% of the graduating class, and the graduating class is now big. I tried hard to say that grade point average is very important, but having done something slightly unusual is also important and interesting. Like the case I mentioned before we started recording, that if you have a science major who plays in the UCI Symphony Orchestra, or who sings in the gospel choir, or is part of the theater arts program, for them that is a liberal art in the way that would not be for a music major or a theater major. Do I think it's worth some effort to keep the chapter alive? Yes, because I think it's probably more useful to young people coming out of the liberal arts than it is to young people coming out of the sciences. I think the people we elect and who accept election do have some benefit from it. If they go on to a campus, if they go on as graduate students to a campus that has a Phi Beta Kappa chapter, they should tell the place they've gone to that they are Phi Beta Kappa members and become active in that chapter. Somehow we don't seem to make this happen. We don't keep track of graduate students who come to us who have been Phi Beta Kappa from their home from a previous institution. We don't even do a good job of keeping track of faculty who come to us who are Phi Beta Kappas. They send out a questionnaire once a year or something. Some people respond. Would the bright young people who have been elected benefit from being together? Yes, probably. But they're elected generally as graduating seniors and they leave us, except for a few juniors. And I think it would be nice if we could figure out some way of getting hold of the new graduate students and maybe postdocs who come to us from elsewhere who are Phi Beta Kappa and give them a chance to interact. Well, this is based on something that's not Phi Beta Kappa. When I was an undergraduate at UCLA, they had something called the Gifted Students Program. I think we're not allowed to say gifted anymore, we have to say I don't know what. But there was a Gifted Students Program, and we had fun stuff to do. We also had privileges of access to library materials that students in general didn't have. So there was a benefit to belonging and some opportunity to interact with other people who took college seriously. Again, everybody's busy. We've tried to arrange some events for the chapter here that I think have been only moderately successful. And yes, I think the students particularly would benefit, but I don't know how to get hold of them unless we insist that incoming graduate students fill out a questionnaire that asks them about Phi Beta Kappa and Sigma Xi. I think that is a concrete thing that could be done, to ask incoming graduate students and postdocs if they have been elected to Phi Beta Kappa and Sigma Xi, and if so, give them an opportunity to interact with each other across department and school lines. First, we have to find out who we are, because you can't give a party if you don't invite people. You can't invite people if you don't know who your friends are. You have to have food and drink as well, and that costs some money. So anything we want to do, somebody has to bring in a few pennies. But I still think it would be a nice idea to invite maybe week 4 or 6 of the freshman, no, not freshmen, but of the fall quarter, to try to invite graduate students who are new to our campus who have been elected to Phi Beta Kappa from someplace else, to try to invite them to some kind of social event and see if they like each other. It turned out gifted students, we really did like each other. And I know this because I was photographed by Life magazine back in September of 1962 at a gifted students social event, and they ran a couple of the pictures in Life magazine, and we all looked really happy talking to each other. So I know it worked. And so we wouldn't know whether this would work unless we did it. But I think, again, it would be worth trying to bring together people who have been elected elsewhere and have come to us. Students, postdocs, faculty. Well, there are two things. There are these alumni chapters in most large cities. And again, the chapter has to know the person exists. So the person who's been elected who wants to keep touch, I think needs to contact the national office and ask, is there an alumni chapter within, I don't know, 50 miles of where I now am? And again, the other thing is students who go on from us, as most of them do, to graduate school or law school or medical school or some other additional quaternary education, I guess. We have primary, secondary, tertiary. PhD must be a quaternary education. They need to tell their chapter at the place they arrive that they are members and become active in that if they're interested. And again, it's a chance to interact with bright persons from many different disciplines. It doesn't happen here, but at the large prestigious universities in Europe, and also Princeton and Harvard, there are clubs or colleges where the members dine together across all disciplines, maybe every night, sometimes weekly or monthly, but where they're expected to participate in serious conversation that is not talking shop. That is, if there are two physicists together, they're not allowed to talk physics. They're supposed to communicate with the other folks about other things. And that kind of atmosphere is very difficult to establish at a state university or a commuter campus, but I suspect one could try with the people who come to us who are Phi Beta Kappas. And the ones who leave us, tell them to go do the same thing someplace else.